While it's not widely known, Alexander actually ate red ant. But that's not our main focus today. Numerous videos have already confirmed this fact. Instead, we are going to explore why this matters to the story. What are the implications of this event? Surely it wasn't just a meaningless power up for Alexander with no further development, right? To fully understand this topic, it's important to discuss what exactly are the living jars. We can observe countless jars at the foot of every minor air tree near the air tree avatars. Actually, not all minor air trees have jars nearby. Dead trees like those at Mount Gelmir or the snowy mountain tops doesn't have any jars. Even some perfectly healthy trees in Limgrave or Altus lack them. There is a clear difference between the ones that have jars and those that don't, and it's the presence of air tree avatars. If there are jars, there are air tree avatars. Based on environmental clues, I assume the air tree avatars are responsible for the jars near the minor air tree. So what are they called then? Well, it's quite obvious. Let's look at the staff of the avatar item description. Ceremonial staff depicting the air tree in his historical radiance, wielded by the avatar who protect the minor air trees. The fact that jars are needed for the air tree is evident. By the way, and it's totally unrelated, one of my favorite pieces of environmental lore that I found myself is Ulcerated Tree Spirit's nature. They usually drop a golden seed. So I've come up with a fun headcanon about them. I believe they are just normal snakes that ate a golden seed. The immense energy from the air tree contained within the seed could explain why they were transformed into a fusion of a tree and snake. Let's get back to the main topic. I believe the life cycle of living jars works like this. They collect dead bodies from graveyards or catacombs, fill themselves with these remains, and then return to the minor air trees. There, the air tree avatars uses its stuff, perfect for smashing jars, to break them open. In this process, the living jars become fertilizer for the minor air trees. This idea makes sense when we consider that, as revealed in the DLC, the Order requires human sacrifices. Places like Enir Elim and the Divine Gates are built from the dead bodies. Additionally, we see Earthly roots absorbing humans in the catacombs, so it's understandable that the minor Earthries would require similar offering. But things as usually didn't go as planned. While the living jars were meant to sacrifice themselves for the minor Earthries, their predestined purpose, they began to develop individuality. They are, after all, living things, with their own thoughts and dreams. Living jars are literally the combined minds of every human inside them. If there are bad people within a jar, the jar itself becomes violent. If the people are good, the jar is chill. If it contains prideful warrior, the jar will adopt the same pride. It's possible that by absorbing corrupted humans or for totally unrelated reasons, some jars gained independence and a will to live beyond their intended purpose. On a side note, the jars in the DLC are entirely different from those in the base game. The most significant difference is that the Shadowlands jars are made from the living beings, people stuffed alive into jars, while the jars in the lands between are formed from the remains of the dead. Now for Alexander, one of our few friends in the lands between. Based on his dialogue, he specifically fills himself with the remains of fine warriors.
Finer battle was never witnessed. How do you fancy joining the lads inside, I was created to be a warrior vessel. Many great warriors reside within me, ever dreaming of becoming a great champion.
Alexander is always brave and strong, aiming to become a single great champion. the greatest of them all. Every ordeal to him is worth undertaking. Yet, there was a moment when he acted out of character, leaving us with an intrigued revelation about the true nature of living jars.
Ah, hello there. It was a battle marvelously fought. You are well and truly a champion, friend. I, on the other hand, am nothing but a crock. One hit was all it took to crack me, and for my insides to come spilling out. After that, I hid like a coward. And as such, I can hardly stand to face one such as you.
Did you get that? Alexander only turned into a coward after his insides spilled out. It's not like Alexander was a coward before. We could fight and even kill him earlier, and he didn't react that way. The difference is that he lost his insides. The flesh of warrior spilled out. Alexander literally lost a part of his personality. That flesh belonged to fine warriors. And without it, he is not as brave anymore. But after that, he finally did it. Alexander is eating Rodan's corpse right now.
There's a veritable mountain of warriors' bodies right here. If I can just squeeze this bunch down inside me, I'll be a mighty warrior again in no time. And you know, the bodies found here are exceedingly fine.
There are two clear pieces of evidence that Alexander consumed Rodan, both found in the description of the Shard of Alexander. Shard of the late Alexander, a shattered warrior jaw, scraps of stewed flesh cling to the shard, and tatters of ornaments can be seen mingled within the slime. Relics of a red-haired champion, it would seem. The red-haired one here is obviously Rodan himself, and this relic in question is his armor. If you purchase his armor from Enya, the Finger Reader, you will notice a piece is missing. This missing fragment matches exactly with the pattern of the Shard of Alexander. Now to the main topic. Why does this matter? So Alexander eats Rodan. What's next? Remember earlier when we discussed how a living jar's character is based on those who reside inside it, which was further evident from Alexander's cowardice in the Khailid Wilds. By this logic, I believe Iron Fist Alexander has inherited Rodan's character. Rodan is literally a part of him now. Of course, Alexander isn't completely Rodan. That's why we encounter another situation where he's stuck in a hole, showing that he is still himself in some ways.
Hello? Can you hear me? Help me! I'm stuck! Ah, hello. How nice it is to see a friendly face. As you can surmise, I've got myself stuck in another hole. Would you mind helping me out again?
But because Rodan was so mighty, a sizable part of Alexander's personality has been overridden by Rodan's. Further evidence of this is seen in the first action Alexander takes after his rebirth. What does he do immediately?
It's hardly more than lukewarm here. I won't be able to temper my body such that it'll never crack again.
He tempers his body with flame. Remember the first time we saw Rodan.
Look up at the sky. It burns.
He was on fire. As evident from Rodan's great rune, he burned himself to resist the Scarlet Rot. So Alexander did the same thing, but unconsciously. He continues to do exactly what he did in his previous life, all to resist the Scarlet Rot. And the tempering was quite successful. Alexander gained fire immunity after this, which he hadn't before. This is really useful against the Fire Giant. You can summon him and he will really help you to deal with Fire Giant, especially considering that the Fire Giant's fire attack just don't work on Alexander due to his fire immunity. After killing Fire Giant, we had to farm Azula. I believe Alexander was transported there accidentally, at the same time we were.
Ah, I finally made it here yourself?
I don't know the mechanism behind how we got there, but I can say for certain that the popular belief that Melina took us there is false. We can reach Farum Azula without Melina, and perhaps even without embracing the frenzied flame. Enya didn't know we had the daughter of Marika, the Kindled Maiden, at our side, and she absolutely wouldn't allow us to inherit the frenzied flame. Yet she talks about obtaining destined death like it's just another mundane task.
You must find kindling. Only the smoldering flame in the great forge of the giants on the highest peak in the lands between can burn the Erdtree. But special kindling is required to reignite the flame. For the flame to burn the Erdtree, a sacrifice is needed of one who envisions the flame and can lead you to the rune of death.
Melina also said something similar.
The one who walks alongside flame shall one day meet the road of destined death.
To access Farum Azula, one must be near the flame of the Great Forge of the Giants. Since Alexander fought the Fire Giant alongside us, it's likely he was transported there with us, the same time we do. We journeyed together as friends. The final meeting with Alexander. Well, we end up killing him in an honorable duel. But what does it signify for Radahn's story? Now it's time for the deep speculation and bold theories. I think a possible answer is that it parallels Radahn's and Miquella's vow. Alexander has mentioned vow twice after all.
I, Iron Fist Alexander, do hereby vow to unflinchingly brave this ordeal. Yes, indeed. I too have a home, though it is one to which I have vowed not to return.
We don't know the exact details, but it's clear that the vow was planned long before the DLC, as evident from the story trailer. So that could be one of the early hints for it. If this parallel holds true, then Radahn's vow could be what many speculate. If you can't defeat me, I promise you to become Miquella's consort. Let's assume for a moment that I'm right, for the sake of argument, and listen to this.
But that aside, you're certainly a force to be reckoned with, eh? Which means I've but one thing to ask of you. Would you kindly undertake my ordeal? Come and tell me when you're ready. I've been longing to fight a warrior as accomplished as you. You are ready then, I take it? Then let us begin. I am the great Jar Warrior, Iron Fist Alexander. Lend me strength, O warriors. Let us become one champion together. As I suspected, victory was impossible. This vessel was found lacking. My thanks. I knew you were the stuff of champions. It was a marvelous battle. I implore you, take what I bequeath from inside me. All vessels are destined to one day break. But the great Alexander lived as a warrior to his last.
Both Radahn and Alexander lived as true warriors to their last, each dying in the ordeals they started, and both died due to the weaknesses of their vessels. Radahn couldn't resist the Scarlet Rot after all. Yet, their stories didn't conclude with their death, but both lived after death in new vessels. Radahn lived in the new Morg's body, and Alexander will live in the Jar Bane's body when he becomes a worthy warrior.
I hope Uncle Alexander beats them all up first. Wow. Cuz, are these
Insights from Uncle Alexander. Thank you. 'Cause I'm a warrior jar, so I need to be strong. I can really have them, right? I understand. I'll get strong. Strong enough. I deserve to have Uncle's insights.